Hello, in this video we'll be taking a look at part 2 of the listening paper in the Cambridge English First exam. Part 2 is the sentence completion task. You'll hear a man or a woman talking about a topic. They'll be either giving an interview or delivering a monologue. And as they talk, you need to complete a series of notes. For this example, please download the PDF and the MP3s from the links in the description if you haven't done that already. Here we're going to be looking at page 63 in the PDF, which is My Vacation Job in Australia. Okay, so what do you have to do? Well, you'll have some time to read through the questions before you begin. So, as you're reading through, start originally by looking for synonymous expressions, thinking of other ways of saying the question. You won't hear the question exactly this way in the listening. You'll hear changes to the vocabulary, maybe a different word order. The answer that you write must be exactly the same thing that you hear. The question, though, won't be. When you look at the gap, try to predict what kind of information you need to listen to. Do you need a noun? Do you need an adjective? Maybe a verb? But you can also be more specific for some questions. Sometimes you might need a noun, but you can guess that it must be, for example, a school subject, or a job, or even a month of the year. So you can start to think, using your own world knowledge, which of these nouns might be most likely. Remember that the answer you write has to be grammatically correct. So if you have the indefinite article a before the gap, you will need a singular noun, not a plural noun. Okay, so listen, complete the notes, write in capital letters and be careful of your spelling. When you come back, we'll go through the answers together and see what else we can learn. Okay. Okay, so let's have a look at where these answers come from, what they are. For number 9, Chris thinks the best place to find a job like he had is the internet. Notice that in the question it says the best place. If it's the best place, we can expect that there will be other places mentioned as well, but only the best place is our answer. And in fact, in the listening, he does say that there were lots of student jobs advertised in the newspaper. But he saw his job for a bus driver on the internet. So that for him is the best place. For number 10, Chris is studying history at university. Again, we can see a distraction here. He says that studying tourism at university wasn't essential to get the job. In fact, my subject's history. So he mentions a subject, but then he says what his subject actually was. So we could guess this as a possible option because we know that it's going to be a noun, but not just that, a university subject. And it's going to be one of the big ones. It could be English, it could be politics, it could be science, something like that. In this case, it was history. But we're already preparing our mind for the information that we're going to hear before we even start to listen. Then number 11, for most of the time he was working for the travel company, Chris lived in a caravan outside of the town. Again, look carefully at the question. It says, for most of the time. So it's going to mention two things. Most of the time and some of the time. Probably some of the time will be mentioned first. And we do get that. At first, I was given a room in a hotel, but hotel is not the answer. But I found that I felt quite lonely, so I moved into a caravan on the outskirts. So caravan is the answer. Outskirts is a synonym for outside of the town. Then for number 12, Chris was often asked to go to a party at the weekend. Again, other entertainment options will be mentioned. There's a cinema, a restaurant. People frequently had a party on Saturday night and I was always invited. It turns out they don't have a cinema or a restaurant, so these are real distractors. In the mornings, Chris had to drive tourists to see the in the desert. You could use your world knowledge here to guess what that answer is going to be even before you begin listening. Before you begin, you would look at that in the mornings and think, well, what would you travel to see? You're a travel guide, something like that. It's going to be sunrise. And that's what we see when we actually go through the listening. Then number 14, many of the tourists were unaware of the need to keep their shoulders covered up when they were in the sun. He says they knew, of course, about covering their head and neck with a hat, but often left their shoulders uncovered, which wasn't very sensible. So again, we have the distractions, the head and the neck. But many of the tourists were unaware of something, and that gives us the answer of shoulders. Then for number 15, the tourists particularly wanted to know how to tell the difference between the tracks of the wild animals. So this comes up here. The tourists were especially keen to find out how to distinguish the tracks of kangaroos from wallabies and wild dogs. So he's talking about the different animals. For number 16, in the afternoon, the tourists were able to see some plants that had more than one use. So we need to listen for something that has more than one use. And here we've got, they were shown which plants could be eaten and which were also used to make weapons for hunting. They are the two uses, so more than one use, eating them and using them as weapons. Chris says that the local government, for number 17, would like to have a larger airport to attract tourists. He mentions other forms of transport. You needed to get a coach from the small railway, but that's what he's talking about. He then says there's now an airport, but the local government is keen to get one built, which can take more flights, especially from abroad. So the government wants to have a larger airport. And then finally, for number 18, Chris advises other students to send off their job application forms in the month of January, at the latest. He mentions other months, but he's talking about when he worked. He worked from May to October. So you need to make sure your application is in by the January of the year you are hoping to work. So again, we need to listen for the specific information that gets us the answer. Okay, so remember those points. Listen for expressions that mean the same thing as the question. Look for the key words in the question. We had best place for most of the time. Unaware of something. So these are the key pieces of information we need to listen for. Write exactly what you hear and beware of spelling. Don't write extra words if it means that the grammar of the sentence would be broken. Be especially careful of adding a definite article like the before you actually have the word the already. You can't write the something. So be careful of little things like that. And that's it really. Next time we'll be looking at part 3 of the listening, which is the multiple matching task. Until then, thank you.